Hello, everyone. Welcome to the final session today at Be More Festival 2024. Hopefully, you had an amazing past 24 hours with all of us at ADP List and all the members and mentors around the world. Hey, Jacob.
Hey, good morning or good afternoon, whatever people are.
Awesome. I don't think I can see your camera, so you might want to readjust it a little bit. All right. Before we get started, while Jacob sets up his camera on that side of things, if everyone can comment on, yes, we can see you now, Jacob. It's perfect. All right. If everyone can comment where you're calling in from, where you're tuning today's Be More from, will be exciting to see. I am in Copenhagen, which is very fitting for today's session because Jacob was originally from Denmark, right, Jacob?
Yes, it's my hometown. I was born there.
Awesome. Cool. So, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. I am extremely thrilled to be here for the final fireside chat of our entire annual conference, Be More 2024. I'm excited to welcome Jakob Nielsen, who obviously needs no introduction, but he's often called the guru of web page usability. And today's fireside chat is about designing the future, AI's game-changing impact on design. Jacob, thanks for joining us. Your work has shaped us and the entire industry for a very long time, for decades, and now we're at the cusp of another revolution with AI. So let's dive in.
Yeah, no, I think so. Thanks for inviting me, and congratulations on a really successful event. And it's great to see so many people from all over the world, which I think that's one of the changes worldwide. Because when I started, design, at least kind of good design or user interface design, was very narrow little field. And to be honest, in the 41 years I've been doing this, one way of characterizing it is I have been driving towards mediocrity. And that sounds bad, right? It's a word that has a bad meaning. But compare to the terrible usability of computers back when I started in 1983, or even when the web started, the early websites were just so terrible. So I spent a lot of time on really moving from bad design to medium or mediocre, whatever you want to call it, design. And that has been a 40-year struggle to go from bad to okay, let's say okay. I think actually, let's say the web is actually by now okay. But it's certainly not great. We don't have great design yet.
You're right.
And so that, I think, is a challenge going forward. And I do want to defend myself. I did a lot of work in things like discount usability, making cheap and easy methods for improving design. And that was necessary because it was not respected. There was no budgets and many problems. And we started from such a low point. And I think realistically speaking, in the world, you can't go from nothing to 100 kilometers per hour or 200 kilometers per hour or something like that without accelerating and moving through the intermediate stages. And so we moved from that standstill, a terrible design, to acceptable design. And that was a worthy struggle, and we won that. And now it's the next struggle is to move from acceptable design to great design. And that's where AI, which is the focus of today's session, that comes into play. Because I think there are really maybe two reasons why it's taken kind of 40 years to get medium design in computers. And the one is the kind of lack of understanding, I would say, among a lot of engineering managers and people who are in charge of products. But the other one is honestly that design has been too expensive. Design and usability, doing user testing, handcrafted design, everything done, to the pixel and all of that. Very expensive. And if you think about any kind of normal economics, like if something is expensive, people buy less of it. And then if they don't even know they need it, or they don't maybe think they need it a lot, they'll buy even less. And so those two changes, I think, will run in parallel, which is design will get cheaper and it will also become more needed because that's what AI is creating for us. It's creating an explosion in software because it's really helping software developers, actually more so than designers. I mean, it's helping everybody, but it's really
Right.
helping software developers. And so software development is going to be vastly cheaper than it has been, which
Wow.
has also been very expensive, by the way.
Yeah.
So in my entire life, I've always read all these headlines saying, "Oh, we don't have enough programmers or engineers or developers. Nobody, not enough people study computer science." All those stories. I mean, I can tell you the headline. I can read them from 40 years ago or from 20 years ago, and they're the same. But now developers are going to get so many more times more efficient, so software cost goes down, which means more. If something is cheaper, people buy more. Same for design, right? Design is also getting cheaper because we have all these helps, aids to our work to make us more increase productivity. And so productivity is almost the only thing that matters to the economy. Like if we can make more, we can have a higher standard of living, but we can also produce more, right? And we can produce more design at a cheaper cost, which means more will be bought and more will be needed because there's all this more software. And so in the old days, it was maybe more of a differentiating factor to have this feature versus that feature because not all programmers could make these features, but in the future they can. I know say the future is actually already now. So we already now have maybe about double productivity for developers based on AI. For design, usability, user testing, those things, not so much so, but still a nice gain.
Right.
But to
Thanks.
me, this is one of the big challenges is that we need to like catch up with the other guys, so to speak.
Well, thanks for sharing that, Jacob. And it sounds like what it's really saying is that the next 5 to 10 years is going to be almost a hyper supercharge in productivity for not just designers but also developers and many different jobs where that's going to change. And speaking of transformations, we're seeing a flood of AI powered design tools almost every single day, from AI designed UIs and AI kind of led research tools, so on and so forth, entering the market. What are some of the most promising ones that you have encountered recently, and why do you think those could be promising AI design tools?
Yeah. Well, I think in some ways, I don't think they are promising enough right now because we're still in the early days. And I think if we think about how it'll be in 10 years, it will be completely different than it is today. I mean, I think I really like things like Auto Designer or the ability to create automatic layouts or give you kind of first drafts or give many drafts or I mean, Figma has some of it, but there's certainly other competitors. I don't want to like specifically endorse one company and all of that, but I do feel like those tools help a lot. There's also in the area of research, like a company like user interviews, for example, does a lot of helping people and summarizing, for example. You can summarize studies you've done and so on. So there's many benefits we're getting already, but then in some sense a little weak because the current AI, and remember, we still have in some sense the AI from last year. I mean, there have been many improvements over the last year for sure, but the next generation of AI, which is like a step up, a true step up in like intelligence. And I really want to say intelligence in quotes because you can't really measure the IQ of a computer the same way as for a human. But capability may be a better word. But capabilities go up like for generations of artificial intelligence, and this is a matter of training, and you need to like train the model with a lot of data, and that takes a long time, and the bigger they get, the longer time it takes. And so the next generation is not really expected until probably either end of 24 or beginning of 25, somewhere around then, and different competitors will launch at different times as well. But all of them are working on this, and so it doesn't even really matter whether one or the other is the more successful because there will be that step up. And that's when you're going to see something like uh, not just like here's a nice layout, but here's like a great layout, a great design. And again, this doesn't mean no humans, no human designers, no human researchers, no product managers, and all of that. We're still going to have all those jobs and those functions, but each of these people will be freed up from a lot of the lower level tasks and be able to focus on the higher level tasks. And that again means that they can create more. And this is a productivity I talked about before. And so when you can create more, one of the things we've always known about creativity is, to a great extent, it's a matter of like throwing darts at a dartboard. Like the more attempts you have, the higher the chance that one of them will be like, wow.
Yeah.
If you only do one shot of goal, if we take another sport as a metaphor now, if one shot at goal, you're going to miss a lot of the time. But if you keep shooting, if you keep throwing darts and all of that, you have a better chance of winning. And so the more efficient we can tell the AI, give me 10 ideas. Okay, 8 are bad, 2 are good, and one of the 2 may be the great one. I mean, that's what you want to do. And again, that as more we can get almost finished designs created very, very quickly in like potentially even minutes or hours, as opposed to weeks, then we can try more. We can also try more with user studies and all of that. So all of the different stages in the design process can be compressed and accelerated. And that means we get more shots on goal, and going back to that sports metaphor. So we'll score more goals is the point.
Thanks for sharing that. It sounds like a lot of it is about, it goes back to the point that there is no one clear winner yet, as we talk about, any emerging tools. But at the end of the day, it's all about helping designers and leaders kind of, put productivity first, and helping them, as you said, score more goals. And we talked a little bit about sort of capabilities, right? And there's so much capabilities that AI can do today, or not even yet today, right? It could, start performing tomorrow or by the end of the year. Do you foresee, somehow AI taking over certain aspects of design work? And if so, which are the areas that would likely be taking over some of the work that designers might be doing today?
Right. Well, I think basically a lot of the low level jobs, and so people have to think about that. It's not your job to draw a line or to choose this color versus that color, but rather to be able to a little bit more strategically. I don't want to say like strategy in like a big sense, because that will be more the leadership's job. But you got to actually be able to understand how to deal with users. And this has always been something we said, right? The goal of design is to design for the users, for the humans. We have user-centered design and all of that. But that aspect of it becomes more important when you can generate things that have all the detailed elements, all the buttons and all those type of things put into place. And you can get automatic translation. That doesn't mean that the translation will be necessarily perfect. Like you can make an user interface in English and you get it in German and Japanese at 2 clicks of a button. They may not be perfect, but it's going to be a good first step. And then you can fine tune it. And so there's going to be a lot of that fine tuning as well. But I want to make one more point, because you also talked about the leadership, and I feel like that's another area where there's going to be a lot of changes because of this increased efficiency. And so right now we are mainly seeing the productivity gains on an individual basis. So one person doing a specific design task, and they can do it faster because a lot of the grunt work can be done by AI. But if you really accelerate all the members of your team, then the team as a whole can also do more. And that means that you can actually do with a smaller team and a more efficient team, because there's a lot of overhead, communication and management and synchronization, coordination overhead. The bigger and bigger a team gets, the less efficient it gets in terms of output per person. So if you have a team that's 10 times bigger, it may only do 5 times as much work. So you've lost kind of half of the output of these people to synchronization. And if you can cut back the team size because each person is more efficient, that's I think is going to be one thing for like the more leadership area to really consider, how to make use of more efficient teams, not just more efficient people, but more efficient teams, and scale back. I mean, it's always in the past been, oh, I want to scale up and I want to be bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
But I think in the future will be about getting smaller to a great extent, and still create. I mean, still create and okay. So today we're actually talking about more about design, product design, and so forth. But to me, I'm actually also very excited about another area of creativity, which is kind of general creativity or content production. So, for example, this is the year of AI movies, video. So we have a lot of progress in AI video, not so much progress in AI text. That was really last year, and I think next year too. But this year is AI video, and we have a lot of progress in video. And that means that it used to be very expensive, very hard to make videos, which also means, of course, for user interfaces, we can now add more multimedia capabilities. But in terms of creators, I really feel like that ability for a small team of maybe 5 or 10 people to probably create like a blockbuster movie that would make hundreds of millions of dollars in revenues. Um, Not yet, right? Right now they can make little short clips that look cute on YouTube and all of that. But I feel like more targeted creation, more small, more independent or indie creators. I feel like that's one of the really big changes in the world, that we are going to support individual creators, individual or small team creators, both.
I see a lot of that these days. I mean, if you look at OpenAI, Sora has been producing sort of Hollywood standards or close to Hollywood standards movie, and I think there's a lot more space, as you say, to take up the lower level jobs and the lower level sort of task, and allow designers and leaders to put themselves in spaces where humans can think even more creatively. And when we talk about these changes, Jacob, what new skill sets do you think designers will need to develop in this century to continue
Yeah.
to stay relevant, right? To continue to stay relevant from both a designer perspective, but also a leader's perspective.
Yeah. Well, I think it's going to be a matter of managing plenty. I mean, we used to be managing scarcity. We used to be able, or have to be able, to do with small resources, very few things. And that's what I said. I mean, I spent 41 years in trying to make it possible to do mediocre design as opposed to bad design. Big step up. But in the future, while we'll have plenty, we will have, I said, we'll have 10 ideas, 100 ideas, a lot of different things. And you have to prioritize, because it's a different type of prioritization. In the old days, we said we can only do 2 rounds of user testing, or we can only have 1 prototype, or we can only do this. Now you can do it all, but I mean, if you get overwhelmed or swamped with ideas and with options, that's actually not good either. So we have to be able to manage plenty, and that is a new thing that was not the problem of design leaders in the past, because they had to manage scarcity or manage being poor and under resourced. And I actually think that there's another area as well, which is, it's always been the case that it's all product development is also multidisciplinary, and we have to deal with colleagues from other fields. This has always been true. But the difference between the different disciplines was not as great in the past, but it can become more, because AI is kind of pushing all of these people, us and developers and marketing and everybody who's on a product. All of these guys are going to be accelerated, and you have to, like, in some sense, catch up with them, or keep up with them, I should say, and not let them get ahead of us. And that, I think, is another big challenge for us. And I feel like last year anyway, I saw a lot of kind of like resistance in design community to really get engaged with AI. I think this year has been much better. I see, not just at this conference, I've seen a lot of great talks here, but also at other events, I see more and more now about designers and design leaders think about how we better use AI in our process. So that's great. But it also becomes like you have to like orchestrate all of these capabilities that we didn't used to have. And that's, sometimes people say that current AI is like having an eager intern. You can sort of ask them to do anything. Yeah, I'll do it. And they spit out the output, right? But it's not always that good.
Yeah.
But in a few years, it will be much, much, much better. But it still needs to have human oversight and human direction. I mean, that's the key thing, direction. Because how's the AI going to know what to do? I mean, that's not what it's going to know to do. And I also think that this change of the base level being handled by AI means that the organization-facing aspects become more important, because it's not so important necessarily that you can pick the right color scheme, because the AI can pick the right color scheme, but what's called soft skills sometimes has always been important, but it's now super important because it's that coordination between all these disciplines I talked about. And we still need to convince people that does not go away. I mean, you can have the best design, but if people don't like it, it's not going to be built. It's not going to work. So, so that's the soft skills are going to be even more important, because I am a firm believer that humans will not go away. I mean, AI will augment us. This is going back to one of the earliest concepts of the human computer interaction movement, is like augmenting the human intellect. Doug Engelbart, the guy who invented the mouse, came up with that idea. So we are getting that augmentation now. We are getting better and better and better, but we're not going away. We're just getting better. And the other guys are getting better too. And so the coordination and convincing and various types of soft skills are going to be super important. And also, I mean, again, talking about the leadership, I mean, you're managing people who are now or will be 10 times better than they used to be. That sounds great, right? But it also may lead up some new challenges.
Thanks for that. What you just mentioned is so relevant, especially when you talk a little bit more when you talk on the point of that leaders and designers will have to learn to handle abundance or plenty, versus right now where most folks are handling scarcity. Right. I think that's such a great quote, and that we can learn a lot from that. Just because as productivity increases and output kind of gets increases as well, there will be plenty and there will be abundance, and just being strategic about where we are. And as you said, the direction that can only come from humans, that is super, super important. And then the last point, you talk a little bit on soft skills. And I personally find that so relevant. I mean, we just launched soft skills yesterday at ADP's opening keynote, where members and mentors can now learn soft skills from one another, practice soft skills as well. We think that that's something that only two humans can support to each other to a large extent. Um, which brings me to my next question, Jacob. You have always been known and a big advocate of the importance of user-centered design, and there has been a lot of talks about AI, just churning out designs, and whether it be research or UI perspective. The question is, how can designers ensure that AI-assisted designs can maintain a strong sense of human touch and emotional connection, and doesn't just feel like just another AI generated text or UI in this case?
Right. Well, first of all, I think that that's one of the cases where the next generation, or maybe 2 generations from now, 2 generations, that's only 4 years, that's not that long time. They will be better at that. So you're correct that right now it's a lot of it. They learn from scooping up what's already out there, and then they kind of create more of the same. But there is also creativity in AI, and there is also empathy or ability to relate to humans on a rudimentary level now, but that will be better and better. And so I feel like that's already will be one of the trends. But it is incumbent upon us, the audience today, to actually insist on that being a direction, because I'm talking about, yeah, there'll be the next generation and the generation after that. And that's true. They will come. There's what's called the scalability law of AI, which is that the more data the AI gets, the smarter it becomes, the more capable it becomes. That is true. But that still leaves a lot of direction for how to use those capabilities. And that's where, until now, I'm sorry to say, that has been mainly determined by very technologically or implementation oriented people, because it was very hard to build AI, still is hard to build. And so it's kind of like data scientists or AI scientists type of people have been the ones driving it, not really driven based on human needs. But the more it becomes an actual business tool, as opposed to like a trained monkey, something that can do tricks and it's fun. Well, we're beyond that stage now. We're in the stage now where this monkey has to work for a living before it gets its banana, and AI has to work for a living, and it has to create useful stuff, and it is creating useful stuff, but create more useful stuff if it has a more human-centered approach to developing these next generations. So that's one thing I really would hope for. But whatever the tools are, I go back to kind of my main principle. The tools are there to augment us, the human designer, human user researcher. And user research will not go away. It will become cheaper, which means that more of it can be done. And so whenever you do a design, and now we can do so much design as we just talked about, well, you've got to get some feedback, customer feedback on those things. And that, I don't think that has not changed at all. What has changed is it becomes easier to get it. It becomes cheaper to get it. You can probably scale some things. If you have an AI-based interviewer, for example, you can interview 1,000 users at almost no cost. Whereas if you have a human, you've got to sit and interview 1,000 customers. That takes a long time. And you can do it in all the different languages too. So you're not limited to just a language you speak, but you can do it in 100 different languages, which is, to be honest, to me, this is another very, very important thing. I talked about just at the very beginning of this session that today we have this worldwide audience here, but we also have worldwide customers as well for a lot of products. And yet, if we think about user-centered design, it's almost only been domestic user-centered design, so to speak, or local users, right? If people even do any user testing, they do them with people like around the corner, not from across the world.
Yeah.
And you don't speak the language of those people for one problem. And
Yeah.
but that problem goes away with AI because we have translation capabilities now, and it's actually amazing how good it already is, considering that was for a long time almost impossible to do natural language translation. Now we can do it rather well, and then again think one generation ahead, 1 year maybe, 2 generations ahead, maybe 4 years or so, and it will be completely fluent. So I feel like that internationalization, globalization, think about all the users, not just your local ones, is a very, very important point. So all those things can be done. But okay, I say it can be done. Now the question is, will it be done? And that again, that's a decision. And that's up to you to push. I mean, every single design team has to push for that and not just say, oh, we got a good enough looking design out of pressing a button on AI, let's just ship that. I mean, that is a prescription for staying at this mediocre design. So as I said, going from bad design to mediocre design, that was an achievement, but staying a mediocre design, that's a failure.
Yeah. Wow. Thanks for sharing that. Which I want to really kind of bring to the next question. I think it's very much related. You talk a little bit about the first phase where there is, from bad to mediocre design, and then now from design, you're trying to go to great design, and obviously AI is going to accelerate that. And I'm going to ask you a controversial or slightly, sort of, provocative question here, right? It's one question that's been debated quite widely in the design circle recently, and I think your perspective would be so important here. Your 10 heuristics of usability for user interface design has been a cornerstone of UX for decades. And however, some folks have argued that in the age of AI, these principles might be outdated or might even be limiting. Do you think there's some truth to that criticism, or should we be rethinking some of these fundamental principles, or are you already rethinking some of these fundamental principles in light of what AI can do these days?
Yeah, no, I really had thought about that because again, I did write down those principles 30 years ago, and that seems like a long time. But they survived pretty well for working with mainframes, PCs, websites, mobile. So all those generations of technology, they were the same. And one of the reasons they are the same is that they are heuristics, and heuristics means broad principles. They're not specific design guidelines. They're not like saying put the search in the upper right hand corner, not in the lower, anything like that. Those design guidelines absolutely can change when you have a different style of design. Some of those specifics can change, and maybe you don't have a search box anymore because you just talk to the computer and it figures it out. So those are true. But voice is actually, it doesn't matter if it's a voice interface or it's a screen-based interface or it's a small interface or it's a big screen. All of those things, those really very broad principles of user control and freedom, for example. That becomes a touchy point when you have agency, right? Because there's another one of the next generations of AI is moving from AI as a chat. I talk to it and it talks back, to AI being an agent. It goes around, does things on its own on my behalf. It has to be on my behalf. So user control and freedom as a principle will still exist. The question is design guidelines. How are we going to make it such that I can have feel that I'm in control of the agent. The agent is not running amok and doing things that I don't really want. So we had to figure out how to do that. And so the detailed design guidelines for AI will definitely be different than the detailed design guidelines for uh, command-based user interfaces, right? I mean, AI is the intent-based outcome specification type user interface. I tell it what I want and it goes and does it. But I still need to have control and freedom. I still need to have visibility of system status. What is it doing? If it does wrong, and I mean, we're not going to have the perfect computer any day soon. I mean, so we still have these kind of error condition heuristics that we need to figure out as well. So I think that all those very, very basic, and that's also why I made a list of only 10. I mean, there's thousands of things we know about design, user interface design, thousands upon thousands. Even 30 years ago, there were already several thousand things known. And today, there's probably tens of thousands of things known. So we boil that down to kind of like the basic points. And I feel like they are still the same. They are still very, very important principles. Now, the interpretations are probably going to change. And I feel this is why I'm so keen on saying, get off your behind and start working on AI for all the people in the design world. We have to figure out how to do it, and we can't just let it happen on its own. We can't just let the technologists and the developers, make it without input from user-centered design and our human perspective.
Wow.
But the basic perspective, that I think remains the same.
Thanks for that, Jacob. And from whatever you say, it makes me feel so motivated to want to maybe create the next generation of AI heuristics. It could be a fun project for designers or leaders who wants to sort of explore that realm of what could be different, and then what should we be doing differently as well. Now let's talk a little bit more about sort of from an organization perspective. I think there's a lot of leaders this time at BMOF Festival. I believe more than 60% of folks who are joining us are, pretty senior in their careers, are managers. So they are sort of leading teams, right? So now let's put it in perspective. For individuals, they go to Figma, they could get plugins from AI and tools. Individually, it's quite simple to kind of adopt AI into the workflow these days. But for organizations looking to embrace AI in design, how can they best integrate it into their day-to-day workflow without disrupting the existing process? I'm curious to hear your thoughts.
Yeah.
I mean, you speak to a lot of folks as well. So
Yeah. Well, I guess I challenge that assumption that it should be without disrupting the process, because I feel like the processes will quite likely be quite different in the future. So you're right. I mean, you can't just blow up everything, but on the other hand, I think it is quite revolutionary, and I think that the Industrial Revolution is actually a good analogy to that. So when steam engines were invented and all of that, right? It was clear that was better than powering your factory with a donkey or something like that. And so you build these new factories, and then over, I don't even know, I mean, more than 100 years probably, it took before we got things like the assembly line, and Ford Motor Company started building automobiles that normal people could buy rather than being very expensive. So this is going to take a while. And I think the main point right now is I don't think we actually know what's the right way of organizing this. So again, going back to that analogy of the steam engine is like a big honking thing that stands in the corner of the factory, and then you run the power from the steam engine with belts out to the individual workstations. Then when we got electricity, which was like the next stage of the Industrial Revolution, boom, this completely flipped, because now you put power at each workstation. You don't have like one big central electrical motor, and it shoots movement out to 1,000 workers. Now, at each step of the way, you have a little motor there that does the specific thing right there. And I think that's a little bit similar with AI. Similar, but not the same, of course. It's analogies only take you so far. But I think the point is you may very flip or reverse some of the thinking and some of the ways things are done. Maybe we have a less of a linear flow. Maybe the entire idea of like the agile development process where you chop up things by features goes away, and we have more of a holistic design process again. We abandoned the holistic design process because the waterfall process took too long, and before you wrote the specs and you then did the design, then you did the implementation. The implementation was not at all what the users needed because each step took so long. So then there was this agile idea. Instead of saying, okay, I'm just going to do like minimal product. I'm going to do like one more feature in the sprint. Boom, I'm going to do it in a few weeks and make that good. And then we're going to do the next thing in a few weeks. So if you want to take a few weeks, hopefully you can match the user's needs better. But maybe we'll go back to the holistic and we'll do everything in one go with this greater efficiency, because maybe it only takes us 3 weeks to do the full product. And so we can do much more integrated design rather than designing each feature separately. And it's another 3 months before we get to the next step and things like that. So I think that reversing in the design process is quite likely an outcome. Now, the specifics, I'm sorry to say, I can't really give you the prescription for that today. I think the prescription, the advice is to really challenge these preconceived notions that are based on how design and development had to be in the past. And so we have the abundance, we have the efficiency, we have the speed, and again, not just with what we can do today, but in less than a year, we'll be able to do dramatically more with the next generation. It's not like generations of AI are not like a tweak, right? What we're seeing right now, what we have been seeing for the last 2 years are tweaks, right? Another version of Midjourney comes out and the pictures look a little bit better. Or OpenAI, now you can upload an image to it that you couldn't do that before. I mean, these are all great new features that are incrementally happening, but going from one level of intelligence to the next level, that's a complete difference in what we can do. I mean, think about, instead of going forward, we can think back, and we can think about the AI we had, let's say 4 years ago, and it could barely write a sentence. I mean, it couldn't be used for anything other than it was like a trained monkey. It was like impressive that it could do anything. It was, because 10 years ago it couldn't do anything at all, right? So it was impressive, but it was useless. And then with ChatGPT and all that, we got something that was actually useful but weak, and it's going to be dramatically better. So I feel like the way it's done in each circumstance will probably be quite different. So I really encourage like a very large amount of experimentation. I feel this is the time of experimentation.
Yeah.
And I don't think that we can say that we can invent the assembly line. The steam engine has just been invented, and the next day we also invent the assembly line. That is probably not really realistic. We got to like do a few steps on the way. But experimentation is going to be crucial, because the one thing I think is very guaranteed is it's not going to be business as usual. It's not going to be the process and love or hate, but it's not going to be that.
Wow, thanks for that, Jacob. And it's that the core of the story and the moral story there is that we should really start experimenting, whether it be it as a team, individual, organization. I think, as you said, this is still a really new technology in many ways, and it's still changing almost every other month, or in fact every other week. And so we don't know what's going to stay. We don't know what's going to sort of last as well and or go away. So we have to start experimenting, which I think it's brings me to also the next question. And I want to leave some time for the audience as well. We sort of talk a little bit on, in fact, a lot on the benefits of AI, which mainly increases productivity. I think also helps us be more creative in many different ways, from strategy to direction. But are there any drawbacks or risk in relying too heavily on AI that we should be cautious about, at this point?
Well, I mean, there are, but I feel like the downsides are so small compared to the upsides that it's worth being aware of. And of course, I think the most famous problem with the current AI is what's called hallucinations, that it'll just come up with some completely wrong thing.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons you've got to check it. But it turns out that it's much easier to check whether something is wrong than it is to come up with the idea in the first place. And so one of my advice for how to use AI has always been, I mean, honestly, from last year, which is not a long time, but since it kind of started last year, I've always had this advice to say, just ask it for a lot of ideas and expect many of them to be bad. Uh, and don't trust it. I mean, you cannot trust it 100%, right? But that said, you can also not trust humans 100% either. And so that the fact that AI will make mistakes, humans make mistakes also. I mean, we are known to make enormously number of mistakes actually, and that's one of the reasons. I mean, if something is really important, you have sort of a process in place to make sure that you double check somebody's work before you ship it and things like that. And I think it's the same will be true is true with AI. Some of that checking can be done by another AI, right? They can check each other, and that's one of the things that the latest OpenAI version called O1 is doing, kind of chain of thought. So it's kind of going through steps by steps and checking on its own work. And it's still not perfect, but it's better. It has improved its quality of reasoning.
Yeah.
And I would expect next generation to do that even more. So there's absolutely the risk of hallucinations. I think a lot of the other risks that people talk about, I'm not actually so worried about. I mean, like AI will kill us all. I don't actually fear that. And I tell you the reason I don't fear that, and that's because AI is not an evolutionary animal. Like humans, we are evolved from nature to be vicious killers, and we killed off the Neanderthals because we were better killers than they were.
Yeah.
And so, if I've been a Neanderthal, if we had a meeting among the Neanderthals, 50,000 years ago, you'd say we have to be very worried about these new humans who are coming out of Africa because they're going to kill us all if we don't do something about it. That would have been a true problem, right?
Yeah.
But AI is not an evolutionary creature that exists because it's killed off other people or other creatures and has survived instead of the others. No,
Wow.
AI has been designed, built, and so I think it's less risky that it's going to decide to just wipe out its competition. I think AI is our servant; it's not our competitor. So I'm less worried about that risk. And the same is true for, you're going to lose your job. No, we will do so many more things with AI that we could not do before. There'll be more jobs, not fewer jobs. Now, I think this is with a twist, right? Because I talked about before about creators, not user interface designers, but general creators like movie makers and stuff. And I think it's possibly true that some of the people who do like low level jobs on productions on video and film productions, their jobs may not be there. There may not be like a lighting crew or audio crew or even cameraman, or those type of jobs may actually go away. But the director or the vision or the creator, the author of the movie, now it's going to go from having just a few hundred people do it because it's so expensive to millions of people creating these things. So the total employment in this case, let's say movie making, will likely be bigger, but certain types of jobs will go away. And I mean, that's probably the same in design. Like if you are a very kind of low level designer and you are really the so-called pixel pusher kind of designer, uh, that job may not actually be there. But so that means it's incumbent on the person to, why they still have a job, to kind of move themselves into that more true creative way of saying what should be done. How do we satisfy customers' need? How do we judge? The AI gives me 20 suggestions, which one I'm going to pursue. Those type of skills are going to be more in demand, not less in demand, because there'll be more things, right? I mean, so this is the classic problem about economic growth and productivity growth, is that if each employee can produce, let's say, just twice as much, you can fire half of your employees. But that's not how it actually works. What
Yeah.
works, what happens is that each person can do twice as much. The thing gets to be cost half what it used to cost. People buy more. We get more affluent as a society. Standard of living goes up. People want more things. That's another thing about evolution.
Yeah.
Humans can never be satisfied. We always want more things. And the things that we want today, our ancestors like 200 years ago couldn't have imagined. And similarly, what people will want in 20 years, we probably can't imagine today because the acceleration is happening, right? So it goes faster, but there will be so much more need and demand, and the economy will be there because of this increased productivity, which means wealth. So many more jobs. I'm not really worried about a lot of the things that most people talk about.
Yeah. Wow. Thanks for that, Jacob. It's definitely relieving to hear that we might not be sort of replaced or killed by AI in this case. Hopefully not. I believe not in our generation at least. Um, last question for you before we kind of go into the more exciting lightning round, and then we'll open up for Q&A, which is, to wrap up our conversation. I think we talk a lot so much about AI, the benefits, the drawbacks, potential drawbacks, and how to integrate AI into our teams and organizations today. What advice would you give to designers and leaders entering this field today in design, in this era of AI? What advice would you give them? Yeah.
I think the main advice is that we don't know the advice. We don't know what's going to be, which means experimentation. And it means uh, or another piece of advice actually is don't assume that what we have now is what we will have next year. It will be so much better next year. And this means you have to stay up on it. You have to constantly be on the lookout for the new tools and new features and then experiment with them. And don't let the naysayers get you down. I mean, make it a caution. Like if something currently has problems, maybe you don't use it on your most important product, but you can use it on an experiment or a side project so you can gain that experience, which will then put you in place to then grab the next opportunity, because those next AI opportunities are absolutely going to be there next year. It's going to be a next generation, much higher level of intelligence or capability. So stay in touch. Don't think, oh, this is a big mistake a lot of people have made actually. They tried some of the really early AI products and they were kind of lame and it didn't work the way they wanted to. And say, oh, I'm going to put that to the side. It's not worth my time. Well, it's moving at an incredibly fast pace. It's accelerating so much compared to the technology revolutions of the past that you've got to stay engaged. You've got to stay in touch. You've got to keep experimenting, keep trying the new capabilities that they come out. That's the only real advice I can give you is like stay engaged, stay experimenting.
All right. Thank you so much, Jacob. And hopefully everyone keeps staying engaged with one another as well through ADP list and everything else, in this conference. We're super excited to have everyone. So we will dive into Q&A, but before that, we're going to go through a very exciting lightning round of two simple questions. Jacob, you just answer yes or no, or just sort of talk about it briefly if you want to. But first question, do you believe in aliens?
Yes, but not that they're here,
Okay,
but
got
somewhere.
it. Okay, second question. Do you think we are living in a simulation?
No.
Okay, got it. I'll let everyone else figure out the answer to those questions, but those are some of the questions that I found in a book that'll be interesting to ask. Awesome. Let's dive into the Q&A then. We'll pick the top three questions, and we've got time. We can move a little bit into more questions. Let me just put the first question onto the board. Okay, let me see. How do I do that? Okay, I might need help with putting on the question. So the first question is by Hakim. Let me just see. Just need to put up the questions 1 second. All right, seems like I can't really put up the question for whatever reason. So I'm just going to read out the question by Hakim. All right, there we have it. So AI will play a supporting role in designers establishing a strong foundation and facilitating rapid ideation. However, excessive dependence can be risky, as seen with Figma. How can designer recognize when to stop and manage this dependency?
Oh, I mean, I think that's actually a really great question. And I feel like don't get too tied in with any one tool. It's not settled at all. I mean, yeah, Figma has some good features now and all of that, and they probably will have next year too. I'm sure they're very keen. I'm aware they need to keep up with developments. But that said, small teams can really create a lot now, as we just talked about earlier in this session. So I think there's going to be a lot of new tools coming out as well. And so broadening up your tool base and experimenting with more tools, and then just remembering, I mean, it goes to the point of excessive dependence, right? That remember that you are in charge. I mean, it's the goal of the AI is to support the human, make us more creative, more capable, higher productivity, all those good things. It's not that you abandon responsibility. If you abandon responsibility, then you do deserve to lose your job, to be honest. I mean, you got to keep that. You got to keep that. And so then the question becomes, what's excessive dependency as opposed to, in some sense, good dependency, or just being augmented or helped. That maybe is a delicate balance. But I feel like one of the ways against being overly dependent on one tool is to not have only one tool, but to keep experimenting and keep trying on alternatives as well.
Got it. Thank you so much for that question, Hakim, and thanks, Jacob. We will have the next question from Jin Go. I believe I just replied Jean's message probably earlier today. Jean's question: will there be a possibility that AI progress faster than humanity can keep up? How can we constantly close the gap of adaptation with the rapid transformation as the quality of AI improves while we're still figuring out on the current stage?
Yeah, I think there is actually, we talked about the risks before, and that's interesting that it is a risk of just acceleration has its own risk in that the pace becomes so fast that it becomes hard to keep up. But ultimately, I'm still very positive on humanity's prospects there, because I feel like that's our, I mean, we have two benefits. Like, we are vicious killers, so we killed off the Neanderthals, but then once we killed them, we didn't stop there, right? We expanded to cover the entire world. So humans are very adaptable and very flexible and very actually able to change with new things. That is one of our core skills compared to other animals. So I feel like I think we actually can do it. It's just that you have to basically put yourself in that mindset that the only constant is change. That's sort of an old slogan, but it's true though. And it's accelerating change, and that's what's hard for people to recognize. And the thing about we are an exponential growth phase, right? And so that seems like in the beginning, it seems, oh, it's slow, it's slow, it's slow. Well, it's actually getting better by like 50% per year, but 50% of almost nothing is still almost nothing. But then when you get to the stage where we're already pretty good, then 50% per year, 100% in 2 years, like doubling in every generation. Now we're talking, and so those are huge changes, and so being aware of that and sometimes it's just a matter of mindset almost. Are you going to say change is good or change is bad? If it's bad, it will depress you and you will not be able to deal with it. If you think, wow, I'm getting these new capabilities I never had, this is wonderful, that makes you, the mindset, I think, is a big part of that. And then, I mean, just you have to keep experimenting. I'm sorry to repeat myself, but that's maybe the one key lesson about when you're in a revolution, you can't stand still. You got to keep running.
Wow, thanks for that, Jacob. That is such a memorable quote. When you're in a revolution, you cannot stand still. You have to keep running. And so, yeah, everyone posting about any takeaways today, #BeMore2024. Please share that takeaway with everyone else who's not here. The next question by Julia, who is a product designer in Teladoc Health based in the US. As you consider the increasing use of AI, how do you think about its impact on environment through its high usage of water and electricity? Are there trade-offs that you make as to when you think it's worthy to use despite the environmental setbacks?
Right. Oh, absolutely true. But I think this is more true now, and it'll be true in a few years, because one of the benefits. So AI does use a lot of energy, but the benefit is that it uses electricity. It doesn't use like jet fuel or something like that. And so electricity can actually be produced with emissions-free technology. Now, I'm not like a power plant engineer, so we're not going to go into details, but it's possible anyway to make electricity in ways that don't pollute, or at least pollute very little. So I feel like that in the longer term futures, if we get aware of that we need more electricity, we need more electricity for other things as well, like electrical cars and all of that. So it's a general point actually, but we can actually build more pollution-free electricity. So I think that that actually is less of a long-term problem than it's a short-term problem, because of course right now we're getting all that pollution. And I mean, I think there's a trade-off to anything, whether its benefits are worth whatever the resources it consumes. But I feel like AI has such an enormous positive contribution to humanity. Now, we more talk today about its impact on user interface design, product design, because that's the topic of this conference. But to me, actually, the two more important things are impact on healthcare and impact on education, and in particular in poor countries or developing countries, where those two sectors are terrible. You can always debate in which countries will as the healthcare as we want and all that. But the truth is, it's much better anyway than it is in some small village, in Africa, some place like that. And the same is true for education. I mean, there's a lot of kids who basically don't have even elementary school. I mean, it exists, but the teachers don't even show up for work, and their education is just terrible. And that can be done with AI. And again, not to say today's AI, even though even already today's AI is better at, let's say, it may not be as good as a good human doctor, but it's certainly better than no doctor, or no teacher. But in the future, it'll be dramatically more better too. And that's, by the way, I think will also be true for more kind of richer people or in the higher developed areas, because we will also have more individual tutoring. So in the past, actually now, even now, right, education kind of works in a mass assembly line fashion. You have like a teacher, a professor, or somebody who stands and like lectures to a big group of students. And that is not a great way of learning. But you'll have individual AI tutoring, and it's going to be on the job and in the moment, right? And as I'm doing something, it's going to help me understand and get better at what I'm doing. So I feel like the entire range will be helped. From the poorest people to the richest, most high skilled people, everybody will be helped. I'm just more, I think, in terms of like, is it worth it? The impact on that poorer end is so important. I mean, you have like 1 billion people in extreme poverty. If we can lift these people out of extreme poverty, or even just get their children to get a good education, so the children will not be in extreme poverty, that is worth so much that it's worth a few downsides as well.
Wow. Thanks for that, Jacob. I think, just to kind of add on to my own point to Julia, to sort of Julia's question, I think as with all things, of advancement and revolution, as more people adopt it, as technology evolves and grow, things get more efficient and things eventually get cheaper as well. And that's just how the things go. Obviously, at this current point, it is still energy inefficient, but I do have I do feel extremely optimistic about some of the work that folks are doing, including some startups or bigger companies that I've seen as well. So thanks for that.
I mean, just to finish up on that point, I mean, you have chips being designed that like lose 1/10 of the power of the previous chips because they're optimized for AI. It's supposed to be being optimized for playing computer games. And you also have what's called algorithmic efficiency, which is better software that uses less computer power as well to achieve the same output. And that takes a few years to happen, but I think that will happen as well.
Yeah, 100%. All right, we'll move on to the next question by Feridon. This is a very interesting question, and we'd love your take on this, Jacob, which is, do you think design specialization will move into niche areas like agencies because of AI, while generalists find a home in corporations?
Yeah, I believe more in generalist than specialist actually with AI, because AI is this is a great learning tool, as which I just talked about before, including for highly skilled people like the audience today. So we can learn more things. We can broaden our skill base. and therefore we can actually do more. Now, there's still going to be some things you're better at than other things, and this is why teams are still better than just one person. But I feel like we will see a trend towards more generalists and less specialists because AI upskills. And another thing, by the way, about AI is that it narrows the skill gaps. It doesn't eliminate skill gaps. Some people are better than other people. This is how it is. But the difference between the two is smaller with AI. So it really allows people to up level their skills in a broader area as before. And that is a trend. It doesn't mean that there will be no specialists, because there are always like cases where you need the extreme, best. But most cases you do not need that. Most cases you just need really good. And that's what we are getting through that uplifting of the broadening skill base. So I think not no specialists, but I think fewer specialists, and I do think more generalists.
Got it. Thank you so much, Jacob. That's such a brilliant answer, and I personally believe a lot in generalists as well. I think I myself am a generalist, a CEO at best, and obviously I was a designer before doing most design as well. So thank you for that. We'll take one last question from Karan. So Karan has 2 votes, I believe. That's under Feridon. If we can display that question, this is probably going to be a quick one, but I thought this question was interesting. Which is, will real-time personalized dynamic content or design be the future? And Jacob, before you answer, I want to say that this is a really interesting question because, a couple of days ago, I was in the shower and I was just thinking, would it be brilliant if every one of us has a internet profile in that sense? And every time we visit a website, every content is personalized to that profile that we have. And so it speaks our language, it speaks in a way that we want to see and hear. Conversions could get way better. Obviously, it could be damaging or great for users, but that could be interesting. So, do you believe in the future where real-time personalized dynamic content and design will be the thing?
Yes, I don't believe it's a short-term future, though. I think that's the type of thing that may actually take 10 years, because it's going to require a lot of increased computer efficiency to do it real time, as opposed to doing, at design time. And you can do, I mean, the generative user interface is what we have now. We can have AI make a design for us, but that takes a while, and you want to have these sub-second response times. That's one of the things that's a constant in user interfaces. We have to have speed is super important, and that's because of the human brain. So that will not change. And before we can have the AI actually produce personalized dynamic content that fast, it's going to be several more generations before we can do it. So, but I think ultimately, yes, because it's going to be so superior. And again, the user experience is what the user experiences. Sorry to just rephrase the word there, but what the user is experiencing, that is the user experience. And that is, of course, better if it's just for me. And it will take a while to get there, though. But I really feel that is the ultimate future, yes.
Wow. Thanks for that, Jacob. Hopefully it comes sooner than 10 years. We have one last fun question in which Utkarsh picked up from Hakim. Where can I get the UX Tiger Monk? Yes, exactly. That's the one. Where can we get it?
Well, I'm sorry it's not currently for sale. I guess if there's enough demand, I can make a shop for them. But to be honest, there's only one UX Tiger swag in the world, and that's this one that I made because
Wow.
it's actually not really a company or business. It's just my evangelism project, my influencer project. So I'm not really selling anything.
All right. Yeah, let's maybe churn out some great demand by, tagging Jacob in some LinkedIn or Twitter post or Instagram post, and hopefully he sees enough of it and he'll give in to us on that mark. I would personally want one as well, Jacob. Jacob, thank you so much for the past 1 hour of great conversation, and thanks everyone here. But before we go, Jacob, if folks want to read or continue to learn from you, where can they find you?
Yeah. Well, I mean, first of all, I have this website, UX Tiger, so that's the place to go for my articles. But what I really recommend is you sign up for my newsletter on Substack, and there's a box at the bottom of that UX Tigers homepage for that, because then like every week, boom, it gets into your mailbox. That would be my main recommendation.
Awesome. So we're gonna send through the link of UX Tiger right here, right now, and everyone can subscribe to Jakob Nielsen's blog as well. Jakob, thank you so much for being a big advocate for ADP List, our mission to help every person unlock their potential by providing them with great knowledge and mentorship from experts. And I would also want to take the time to thank everyone here for purchasing the ticket at ADP List, supporting our mission, being a part of this community, and Be More 2024. This is the largest conference that we've ever done virtually. And we really, really want to, I cross my fingers, that we bring it live in person next year. Okay, Be More. Hopefully, we bring it in person next year for all of you. Jakob, you must be there. I know my team has been talking about this for a long time now, and we want to make it happen. So thank you all so much for being a part of this year Be More 2024, and I hope to see everyone virtually and in person next year. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jakob.